Hey there, guys. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your time. Again, Dr. Erickson, EHS Physical Therapy Chiropractic, your herniated to healthy disc expert, and along with...
Yeah, Dr. Jake Anderson at Essential Motion Spine and Sport.
So we want to give you as much value as possible on these videos. We want to try to educate as well as dispel any kind of myths out there, misinformation, fears even. Herniated and bulged disc problems, low back, neck, actually any part in the spine, really it can happen, but they're very common issues. They happen to all of us. It doesn't necessarily, matter whether you're, super fit bodybuilder or someone who's completely inactive, and it's going to affect all walks of life. Because they're so common, it's just what happens. Now, there are things that we can do to help, decrease or limit the chance, of that kind of injury. But we also wanted to talk about, a common question that comes up is, can this kind of thing heal itself over time, right? So I have a disc bulge, or let's say disc herniation or extrusion. There's different kinds of levels of how bad that is or looks on an image or a scan. And then how does that relate to maybe some degenerative disc disease, or DDD, another word that we see quite often as that tissue kind of degenerates over time. So let's start with explain kind of what those, like a bulge or herniation, that kind of thing is, and how it is possible that in that area it can, heal itself.
Yeah. So we've kind of talked about these before in videos, but the disc is probably one of the most common pain generators in the spine. So I'm going to come up closer here so you can see the pictures.
Sure it's in there.
So the disc, we have the bone on top, we got the bone on bottom, and this disc is in between. So you can see the, yep, you can see the netting on here. That's like the outer side layer of the disc. The annulus fibrosus is what we call that. The inside, like jelly, squishy material that you see there, that's called the nucleus pulposus. So that's like a gel-like substance within the inside. Yep. So we can have injuries usually to the backside and the outside of the disc. So that would look a little bit like that. That would be like a bulge. Then you can go to like a herniation. And then we have a couple different variations of herniation where you can actually have like little fragments of disc tissue. Regardless, it just means there's disc tissue within the joint space. Not supposed to be in, yep. So you can irritate that nerve, cause pain, you can get radiating symptoms.
Even the annular wall here, the annular wall has nerve endings. That's what we talk about. Jake said that the disc is a common source of pain because you can have what's called discogenic pain, so pain originating from the disc. That outer side is highly innervated, just like bones are highly innervated. The inner part, the middle part of that disc is not innervated.
Yeah, so that's kind of what a herniation is, and this can cause back pain, symptoms down the leg, symptoms down the arm, wherever it may be. So the question is, can these heal? And they can. So when we get that irritation of the disc, or we get that bulge out into the disc space, the body's going to recognize that it's foreign, and we're going to have, macrophages and everything come in to eat that tissue away, or the body can sort of resorb that back into where it's supposed to be. Yeah. We can also sometimes change that with specific movements and loads that we can kind of run you through and guide you through when we work on the body. Yeah,
so there's some specific techniques, assessment techniques and exercises that Jake's talking about to help. But your body, like you said, that spot that's taking up space it's not supposed to be in will be recognized as, like you said, foreign. Like, we don't want that there. And so because the outside of these tissues are innervated, but they don't get good blood supply, we consider actually avascular, they don't get blood supply. They get their nutrition through kind of the osmosis of the tissue and the fluid around them. So as you move and exercise and try to stay active and as healthy as possible, the blood and the tissues around these structures carry that oxygen, which is needed for the healing, and then that's part of that inflammatory phase. So you think about inflammation, you sprain your ankle, it's all swollen and angry, full of blood. Because the blood, it's part of the healing phase. It needs that initial inflammatory phase to bring the new nutrients and tissue and get rid of like that. Those macrophages kind of eat up out of all the like little Pac-Mans kind of eat up and clean up all that little garbage around the outside. So yes, they can, heal in the sense of you become asymptomatic. That tissue kind of reabsorbs or shrinks back down. Now, will you always see something on, like if you get another image, an MRI, and it look like, I still have this bulge here? That's probably more scarring, right? It's just like a scar tissue, or it could still be there a little bit, less than it was. But as long as you have enough space and it doesn't bother the nerve, who cares? You don't have any pain.
So that's very important to understand here because we've seen a lot of questions on this in the past. So someone will come in, they'll have an injury and they'll get an original MRI, right? And that's going to show the disc herniation. Well, then they'll go through a treatment of care and post their pictures on Facebook. And then 6 months later, a year later, they get another MRI, and the image does not look any different, or there's small changes.
Yeah.
But their pain and symptoms are gone.
Yep.
So you cannot correlate your progress and healing directly to the image. It's more based on what can my body now tolerate, what movements can I now do that I couldn't do before, how are you functioning better?
Yeah, things can change over time with the treatment. And I mean, there was one person that I had talked to that only had back pain, had obviously a very bad looking MRI, very large, herniation, and only took her, I mean, and honestly, this is not that long in the scheme of things, in the whole scheme of your life and the healing journey. And because these tissues are avascular, right, not great blood supply, as opposed to if I break my arm, good blood supply. I put it in a cast, it's going to be a good 2 or 3 months, and then it's probably healed. And this took this lady, 6 months to feel like fine, like no, I'm great. All of a sudden that the first month was awful, could barely walk, using a wheelchair. Month 2, okay, I can walk, I'm starting to do things. Month 3, starting some exercise. So within 6 months, feeling fine, all the way back. That is, it seems like a long time, but it's really not. That is a good result actually in 6 months, as compared to, like I said, you could severely break a leg even. A fractured ankle maybe, and they have to put some hardware in there. That's going to take you at least 6 to 8 months to recover. It could be up to a year.
After
to really
rehab
feel
to
really feel like you're back to your normal self.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that these tissues do heal, but it just takes some time because of their limitations and that microenvironment that they're in, and all of the different loads that we place on them. Right. So sitting, standing, bending, doing things, they can take a while. Talk about some of the different muscles that kind of surround this area, and how even though weak muscles as compared to strong muscles, as compared to core strengthening, how does that affect the actual disc tissue?
Yeah, so there really isn't any muscles that attach directly to the disc itself. The psoas does have some attachments in there, the hip flexor, we've heard of that before, but that's not enough to actually create any effect one way or another.
Enough stability to stop it from moving. You need these to move some. That's just how we're built.
So common scenarios that, I just need to strengthen my core and then I won't hurt my back. So people will go into doing, crunches, V-ups, toe touches, whatever it may be. But there's a difference between
planks and different things,
There's a difference between core strength and core stability. So you can strengthen your core or become more aware of how you use your core. Like heavy weightlifters do this exceptionally well. They create a bunch of stiffness in the spine,
that
intra-abdominal pressure,
that pressure
before they go into the lift. So when we think of the core, we can think of not only our six-pack muscles, but we have the obliques, transversus abdominis. We have the small, tiny muscles that run all the way along the back. All those work in conjunction.
Some through there, some that attach from the transverse process down to the edge.
Right. And all those work in conjunction to create stiffness in the spine, basically limit movement. So that's what core stability is. When we have disc herniations or disc injuries, it's usually
control that movement under loads.
Right. Yeah, because when the injury happens, it's usually flexion with a little bit of rotation under load. You're picking something up, whatever it may be. But if you can change the way you create that stiffness or be more aware of how you create that stiffness, like the big weightlifters do when they go into deadlifts, that can offer some help.
Super strong, weightlifters, like we started it, they're not immune to low back injuries. People who don't lift weights, and by lifting heavy weights, you're not setting yourself up for a disc injury either. Yeah. There's no direct link or correlation to say, well, if I lift heavy weights, I'm going to have a back injury, or if I lift heavy weights, I won't have one. It's possible. It's all about what Jake is saying. I think is being aware of some of that core stability and how to control the movement under loads to lessen the chance that you have something. But you could then go on you could sit in a car trip for 8 hours or on a plane for 8 hours, and all of a sudden you stand up and you can't get upright. It happens to the best of us.
So it always happens when there's too much, too soon, too often, just above your body's tolerance for whatever it might be. And that could be on repetition too. So, picking up a pencil on the ground might not bother you, but if you do it 1,000 times a day, eventually it could bother you because you might just pass your body's tolerance.
Or even those who are active throughout the day, but maybe sit, in a car or at a desk for 8-10 hours at a time.
Yeah.
Over time, that's where even that degeneration or that degenerative process comes into play. I mean, it's more likely that this happens as you get a little bit older, because there's some degenerative processes where some of that annular wall starts to crack.
Yep.
It's not quite as strong, and it allows some of that disc material, some of that nucleus to kind of push through. I mean, that's why. Now, younger people still get it, but at a lesser rate. Someone who's 20s as opposed to someone who's 30s,
50.
40s,
Yeah.
50s. It's more common in that 40s, 50s decade of life, per 100,000 people, as compared to someone who's 18, 19, 20. It can happen, but less percentage of the people, because they have the tissue is just a little bit stronger. That disc tissue is a different kind of tissue than muscle and tendon and bone. It's a different kind of. It's built differently.
And we also tend to be a little bit more active in our younger years, and as we age, we become more sedentary, and we get away from fitness, working out, eating better, running around, playing with friends. So you can build your body's tolerance by doing strengthening and working out.
But you probably
and
get
staying
stuck
fit,
in
right?
some of those, like you're talking about, some of those repeated postures,
Yep,
movements
sitting all
over
day,
time, based on demands of either work or home, or there's certain things that can lead to at least increase the chance that this happens.
Yeah.
And then as that degeneration, and again, degeneration is just a natural part of it's a bad word.
Age-related changes.
And it produces fear in our brains, and
falling apart.
I'm degenerating, and I think of you're just gonna crumble into nothing, but that's not.
That's not true.
It's just the way our body handles the tissue and the breakdown of tissue as we age, and so it does lead to potentially more problems. But you can't regenerate that tissue once it's degenerative, but you can try as much as you can to
Restore function.
Yeah, to restore all the movement,
tolerance.
and if you don't have pain, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else you want to hit on there?
No, I just wanted to touch on those topics of the most common question of, can a disc heal? Can it regenerate? If I'm strong, will that decrease the chance? If I'm weak, will that increase the chance? Well, I mean, I think we covered those topics and discussion points pretty well. And then if anybody has any other questions or any other things they want to hear about, please let us know.
Tag us below. Yeah. Thanks, guys.